Hello, everyone. Glad to see you back at Silver Tears Tarot. And as always, a warm welcome to those of you who are joining for the first time. So, today we're going to take a next step in this Soulmate series, talking about your lesson. That was something that came out during a couple of the last readings that we were looking at. This was a pick a pile. We were looking at your person, and it became evident that we needed to look at your lesson too. And I do call this the Soulmate series. So this is now becoming much more a series of readings. So I set these up as a playlist on YouTube. And we have some interesting pictures that are starting to come together. So if you want to get caught up, you can look at the rest of the readings in the Soulmate series to get a feel for kind of how this collective is shaking up, or how it's shaping up, and I would say it is really shaping up. As we grow our tribe here on this channel, I've noticed we have a much more consistent energy as time goes on. Anyway, it's a totally amazing thing to watch. So, as usual, this one's going to be a general reading. It'll be for all signs. The readings are also timeless, so you'll be more drawn to readings when it's the right time for you to hear the messages in those readings. But again, there are a lot of these readings that are tied together, so you may start seeing that you even might want to watch a few of them. Um, and of course, the readings won't resonate with everyone. These are readings that I'm doing for the collective, but if it does with you, I would just ask you to please like, share, and subscribe. And that way you can stick with me, and so I can know which videos you want more of. So today, like I said, we're looking at you. This last reading, I did a pick a pile. Remember, I did a pick a pile about your person. If you haven't seen that one, it's part of the Soulmate series. You might want to go back and take a look at it. Anyway, this one didn't seem like it should be a pick a pile. We're going to look at the energy of this little collective that we're building here and just kind of see, what it is that you are supposed to be learning from all this. And of course, we'll start by getting, your current energy that's going on around you. So that's where we'll start. We'll draw a card for your current energy that's going on around you. And really, this is kind of a deep dive into you and what it is that you're supposed to be learning about. And it's going to be different for each person, but it is a collective. It's a collective energy. And like I said, it's starting to really coalesce into a picture. So we have the Hermit just taking the top card. I let's see. So the Hermit, and how can I put this? This is you not you're sort of refusing the call in a way. So not to let me think about this, how I want to say it, because it's not that you aren't doing the work or you aren't going off to do the work, but there's an opportunity for you to get a little bit deeper in this work, but it's a scary opportunity. And so this is maybe something that right now you're looking at it and you're not sure if you want to dive in that deeply. I think that's a better way to say what's coming from this card. So your current energy is that Hermit in reverse, and it's that sort of apprehension about diving into the next level, I guess. Um, let's look at your energies as they relate to this person, because this is going to be about, the lesson that you're learning with them. And this is the energy that is currently flowing between the two of you. So you may not be in contact, but there's still going to be some energy that's flowing between the two of you. And right now, it's an energy of balance or trying to establish balance. And I always just take the top card, unless I'm guided to take more than one, which has happened recently, but is not usually the case. So anyway, what's happening between the two of you right now is this attempt to make balance. But part of it, there is a 3D physical realm sort of effort to make balance where maybe it looks like them running from you or not being very communicative with you right now, or possibly just, kind of a lower level of energy in an attempt to kind of get low to get more balanced. But by the same token, in the spiritual realm, there's also an attempt to get balanced, but it doesn't necessarily look the same. So we'll look a little bit more into that when we clarify. And so I didn't introduce my decks. I am reading for you from the Star Tarot, and I'm going to go ahead and clarify with the Revelations deck. And we'll kind of start from there. I think these two decks work really nicely together, but the Revelations deck, you'll find I use it a lot. Kind of works really well with almost every energy. But what we've got so far is you in a situation where it's maybe a little bit nerve wracking for you to jump into the next level of something and you're really seriously kind of considering it. Meanwhile, the energy between you and your person is trying to establish this balance and, with varying levels of success. I get that. There's a juggling that comes with this card sometimes. And that happens sometimes when it's hard to establish that balance and you have to keep making adjustments in order to make it possible. And those could even be emotional adjustments. So let's see what sticks out the most about this situation with this person, because this is going to help us to understand that what it is that you're to be learning about here. And then we'll get a little bit more clarity, hopefully, when we clarify with the Revelations deck to understand the finer points. So we've got the Queen of Cups, and this is about giving and receiving love. Okay, so the Queen of Cups, and I'll hold it up here so you can maybe see it a little bit better. The Queen of Cups it's an emotional flow sort of card. And the Queen of Cups as a character, as a court card, as a being, is an incredibly loving person who loves unconditionally and is quite capable of doing this. And this is part of your lesson. It's not so much that you don't already know how to love unconditionally. It's more about loving unconditionally in the face of maybe some of those conditions. So there's something to think about. Again, we'll see a little bit more when we clarify, but that's the thing that sticks out the most. When I said what sticks out the most about this situation, it is really about love and the expression of love. So let's go ahead and just ask the direct question. What is it that you are to be learning from this situation, with this person? So you are clearly learning something. You're working to establish balance right now. It's pushing you to the limits of your comfort zone, which we see over here. We've got kind of this current situation where maybe you are doing pretty well, but you're still feeling like there's something here that is in your healing path that is maybe feels like a lot to take on. We know that you've got some unconditional love in this scenario, and this is part of what you're learning is to keep your heart open. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, and we have the King of Wands in reverse. So this is about dealing with someone who's overly controlling, I guess, I just want to say. So it could be, this could take, I get these pictures that pop out. So when I do an individual reading for somebody, I get pictures that pop out, and it's a set of pictures. I'm very visual. There's a set of it. Sometimes specific words come out. When I do a collective reading, it's a whole bunch of things that come out. I might explain one or two of them, but just know there's usually a bunch of different possible scenarios that pop out. So a couple of things that pop out here a little bit strongly are you gave your love to somebody who felt the need to be in control of the situation, but it's really just that this person feels the need to be in control of things. But there's an awkwardness about this because there's something about you and the disarming nature of this love that you gave that establishes sort of this need for balance, but also makes it a little bit tough to get to that balance. And so things have happened here where maybe the two of you are not in as close communication as you once were. This is partially their attempt to pull things back and to control things that way. And is partially a response to being confronted honestly with this much love. So I guess we understand that part of your lesson here is to be able to continue to give that love. So I get it in I have these mantras in my meditations that I do every day. And one of them is about love. And the one about love talks about giving and receiving love in equal measure, like breathing. And, this is the lesson for you. Sometimes you may give more love than you are receiving back. And that's going to happen, but this is a balance that has to be reestablished. It's when we don't see that balance being reestablished that there's a need to regain balance, that there are scary things that you may have to confront to figure out why it is that you would ever allow this to happen. And then you have a person over here that sort of fits into it perfectly like a puzzle piece and has they need a lot of love, but they're not necessarily willing to have that equal energy exchange. So let's take a look here in this next card about what is it that kind of it creates a struggle for you. So we see some of what this is more than one card. If I have just one fall, then I pick that one up. If I have multiple ones fall and they fall face down, I don't take any of them. But what I was saying is, we see that you've got, these lessons that you are to learn, or that you're what you're supposed to be learning here. But here is your challenge, or kind of the thing that's in the way for you a little bit, and it's that Five of Cups. It's finding a life without regret. So, and that's putting it as simply as possible. The Five of Cups. If we take a look at this card in the upright, you have this person who is just really sort of feeling bad about things. You can see that there's this sense of sadness in them, and there's a sense of regret, and they have these three cups in front of them that have fallen over, and the emotion is everything is just coming out of them. But behind them, there are these two cups that are, this they hold transformation. They hold transformation in this beautiful possibility. And so the idea is not to focus on the three cups that are down here at the bottom, but instead, to focus on the possibilities for transformation here. And so when you have this card in the upright, you have a lot of that regret that you feel, and a lot of that focusing on the three cups. In the reverse, it's an opportunity to focus on the possibilities for transformation. And so, really, your struggle here is not to well, first you're going to have to be able to keep your heart open, despite the fact that there may sometimes be situations where you are not super inclined to do so. There may be pressures and, people that sort of make you want to close it up because of the way that it's difficult to establish that balance and so on. And for you to also be able to say, I'm going to live without regret. I'm going to give love without regret, despite the fact that sometimes it may bounce off and may not go the same way that you'd like for it to. Um, but that's just a lesson of acceptance. It's being able to accept, and I've said this before. Really, it's to be able to release, right? It's to be able to release attachments and release expectations and assumptions about people, about situations, about outcomes. If you can release that, then you will also be able to release a lot of the regrets, because regrets come from assumptions and expectations, honestly. So let's take a look at what is coming up next for you. And so when I say that, I really mean what's next. So it's not the what's all the way down the road, how are things going to go in the long run. This is more near term, and just sort of understanding how things are looking for you. As what is the energy favorable for? We've got the 10 of Wands. So there's a burden here. There's a burden here. And so your next step is not always going to be the easiest of steps. And it looks like here we've got one that may not be easy, but feels to me like it's not a bad 10 of Wands. So it feels like it may be very much worth it. And so I guess the way I would explain that, and we'll see a little bit when we clarify, is that sometimes you take on a little bit extra, but it's for a good cause. Like having kids, in the first few months, the first few years really of having a child to take care of, that's a super heavy, intense sort of thing. but it's totally worth it. And yet it's a huge burden to take on. But if it's the thing that's the right thing, then it's the right burden. So I'm not suggesting that somebody's having a child here, but what I will say is that there is going to be some additional burden that's coming into the picture here. And it's not necessarily going to be one that you automatically shun. It could be the burden of reestablishing this relationship. But we'll look at this a little bit more when we clarify, because just looking at what we've got on the table here, this is about, remember, what it is that you have to learn. Okay. So it is about your current energy being that you are looking to learn something new, but you're a little bit nervous about it. You're not ready to jump in. Your energy with this person that you've been working with is you'd like to find some balance. Maybe you're doing that in both a physical and a spiritual sort of way, but there is some struggle and, trying to establish that balance. You have really given this person your heart, but maybe they have worked really hard to control things because that's the way that they respond to a situation like this. So when they are confronted with an incredibly loving situation, they freeze up a little bit because frankly it's a little uncomfortable for them and they aren't quite sure how to respond. That could be for a number of reasons, but just we'll look a little bit more deeply into it because your job is to be able to be unconditionally loving, regardless of the fact that sometimes you're going to be loving of someone who doesn't know how to receive it. And you need to be able to give it and receive it as well. And then we have this additional struggle of looking on, I guess, this struggle of trying to look on the bright side, or at the very least, looking on the bright side feels too much like ignoring what's on the other side. And really, what you might want to do is make sure that you're not ignoring. Make sure that you're turning around and also taking into consideration the two cups behind that are still standing and hold all of that possibility for transformation and so on. Because there's a lot coming here, and that transformation could be very useful. So now let's take a look and clarify. And again, we're going to clarify with the Revelations deck. This is one of my very favorite decks. We're going to start with the Hermit in reverse and just understand a little bit more about what's going on there, because we noticed with this Hermit in reverse, it's that feeling of it's the part of the hermit where you're not getting into your thinking cave and doing it and doing the work, but the thing is you are. And there's something specific that you are sort of not willing to jump into. So this is the Fool. And remember, I changed my spread. If you guys haven't seen lately, I changed my spread and my situation here a little bit so that I can keep the cards out, so that you'll be able to see the artwork to the cards below. Because the way that I was previously doing it, I was having to lay the cards on top of and next to each other, on top of the card that they were clarifying. And I like it better when we can see the card underneath a little bit more. So we have, and here, let me give you a closer look at both of these cards. So we have the Fool in reverse and the Two of Swords in reverse to clarify the Hermit in reverse. The Hermit in reverse was telling us that there was a situation here where there is a learning, there is something for you to do, but you are reluctant to jump in and do it. And here we see that clarification with the reluctance to jump in with the Fool in reverse. This is that not wanting to jump into a new thing, not wanting to try something new, for a variety of reasons. This could be for a variety of reasons, but it's also a decision that's not being made. So this Two of Swords is very much about a decision that's not being made. And so there's some sort of commitment that's required here, in order for this hermit to turn up upright, so that we would be able to see that you are able to look into and truly absorb the lesson. And so there is something, this sort of wall that you're hitting right now. And it has to do with your commitment to the cause. Basically, you have to be ready to jump in and jump off the edge, and you're not ready yet. So that's just kind of the place where you are. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just where you are. And so looking into the energy between you and your person, you have this desire to set things straight. It's almost like what I sometimes feel from the Justice card, but it's really more of a desire to establish balance. So let's check into that. It's a desire to establish balance, but there is some struggle. We're going to take both of these. So we've got the Page of Swords and the Queen of Cups. Okay, so the Page of Swords is has a lot of daring. Okay, the Page of Swords has a lot of daring, but not necessarily a whole lot of know-how. And will sometimes jump in. Doesn't have a ton of experience, I guess. The Queen of Cups, as we saw over here, is all about unconditional love and the flow, unlimited flow of emotion. And this is a good, stable Queen of Cups that we're seeing in both places. It's really about how can I establish some balance between this love and this desire to come forward that I feel. And so that is maybe a feeling that both of you share as you think about it, especially those of you who are not in communication right now. So that's what I'm really feeling off of this card. I feel like that's kind of the energy that's between the two of you. And that's going to be, it's going to play heavily into this. One of the reasons I wanted to ask it in this spread is because we're talking about the lessons that you're going to learn as a result of being with having this interaction with this person. In some cases, you were with them very briefly, you interacted with them relatively briefly, and then they took off. And some of you are saying, why am I still feeling this way? Why is this still going on? I don't usually react this way. This is uncharacteristic. There's kind of a lot going on here. Well, that's because some of what's being asked of you is pretty intense, and you're not necessarily ready to commit to jump off yet. So that's okay. It's not, and that's one of the things that I just feel like really needs to come through. It's okay that you're not necessarily ready to jump off and commit yet. That's why you're watching tarot readings. That's why you're watching this reading. And so let's look a little bit more into it. This is the energy that's happening between you and your person. Here's the thing, remember, that sticks out so much. And it was that Queen of Cups, which we've seen now come up a couple of times. And so here's a situation that didn't pass judgment. And again, we know this Queen of Cups has given an unlimited amount of love to this unbalanced King of Wands. And that's not going to fly because he doesn't necessarily respond properly. It's put her in a position to have to really think things through and to say, wait a minute, am I getting this right? And to do that soul searching and to understand what does this relate to the balance? And this hermit is upright because this is a situation where you willingly went into your thinking cave. And you want to solve these problems. You want to understand, well, what went wrong here? I feel like I did, and this is feel like I did what needed to happen in order to bond properly with this person. Seems like things were going really well, but somehow they were not. They were not necessarily real receptive. And this is all about now what you have to learn. What happens when you run across somebody who is this type of non receptive? And so we know that you've already done some learning because you were able to flag this up as something that didn't didn't work for you. It didn't pass judgment. Maybe you didn't flag it up immediately. Maybe you gave them lots of chances, or you just knew that you're giving unconditional love, and sometimes that the boundaries become a little bit confusing because unconditional love doesn't necessarily stop because someone has crossed a boundary. That just may necessitate a different type of reaction as well. It doesn't mean you stop loving them. So let's take a look at this situation. This is where um, my question here was really what is truly your lesson here? And your lesson is probably this is not the only person that you've dealt with this set of characteristics. Let's look a little bit more in here. But it seems like there's a cycle that is a single card. So see, there's a cycle that's happening. Right as I'm saying it, the Wheel of Fortune comes out. And so the Wheel of Fortune is really about when we see it come out in this context, it's about moving on to that next step. And we're talking about the lesson that you have to learn. So it's not so much just moving that cycle forward, it's also understanding what has to happen here in order to get out of the cycle. So we've got the Hanged Man in reverse. We're going to go ahead and take all this. We've got the Hanged Man in reverse who has not learned the lesson. So the Hanged Man in reverse is still very much up in the air. This is something that it hasn't landed yet. And this is similar to, could be relevant to this wall that you're hitting, this commitment that you haven't quite made. You don't quite have the new perspective yet that allows you to commit to handling this King of Wands in a certain way. And here I said I wanted to let you see the artwork, but it's hard to get everything kind of centered all in there so that you'd be able to see it on camera. But let me break this down a little bit more. So the lesson that you're here to learn is about dealing with this reversed King of Wands, which is a sort of an arrogant, controlling energy, not necessarily in all facets of things. I'm not saying that your person is just kind of an arrogant jerk. I'm just saying that there is a part of them that their defense mechanism is to control, and it's possible if you think about it, your defense mechanism when met with this may be to pour in more love. And so ultimately it ends up with kind of this unbalanced thing. So you guys are looking to reestablish that balance. But if you pour in more love and they are sort of being more difficult and more controlling, you end up with it being unbalanced and a situation where, in order to balance it out, there are some difficult balances that need to be struck, some difficult things that need to happen. And that could see you coming out of this cycle that you may have been in for a little while here. So the Ten of Cups, I was guided to take the cards that came out on top. So I had a couple of little stacks that sort of turned themselves over when I was shuffling, and my guidance was to take the tops of both stacks. So that's what I did. And we saw the Hanged Man, where this is the lesson not quite learned. But there was also the Ten of Cups. And so the Ten of Cups in this context, and it doesn't always mean this, the Ten of Cups in this context is a situation where it's like almost too good to be true. And so it's like you are being lured into a situation that feels almost too good to be true as you're dealing with this person. And there's going to be something in that for you about how you'll recognize this if it happens in the future, because it will happen in the future. That's the thing. This is a cycle. You keep running into these people who behave this way, and they are attracted to you because of the way you behave. Now, what's typically happened in the past is you've engaged them in some way, and then things maybe didn't go the way that either of you had hoped. Well, this last time, you found somebody special. You engaged them. You decided that this was not the way that it was supposed to feel because you were able to flag this up. You've been working on your self-worth, which is part of what happens to enable this. Put you into your thinking cave, because when you're dealing with this person now, you realize, hold on, I haven't learned the lesson. Like, you haven't learned the lesson yet, but you know there is something to learn. You know that the universe is kind of giving you that push to learn this lesson. And what you're being told here is, look for the thing that seems too good to be true. The perfect relationship is never actually going to be perfect. When it seems effortless, that's a great sign, but watch for around the edges. Are they scary things around the edges, or are they just, hey, I have to work around the edges? Because if it's the latter, that might not be so bad. So let's look at your Five of Cups in reverse here. And this was that hidden energy around what you were struggling with. And so it's really, this is perspective. It's not the same perspective as we see represented in this card, but this is a matter of perspective that needs to be worked out. And so it's this, oh, what have we got here? So we've got the Eight of Cups in the upright. Has to do with, okay, so maybe your person walked away, but you have a tendency to sort of bolt when things don't work, but not necessarily this type of thing. You know how to give unconditional love, but you also know how to drop something like a hot potato when it's the wrong thing. That's interesting. That's interesting because it's part of what you may want to, it's part of, like, it's a rash response to things that you may decide you want to, and that message might be specific for just a couple of people, but it's a strong one. So basically, learn from this person. This person has maybe not, they've walked away, or they've turned away, they've stopped communicating. um, and here we see that Two of Pentacles about striving for balance again here. And this one is more for you internally, but we see this person has walked away, and it's kind of showing you, hey, you may not want to be somebody who walks away when things get difficult. You may want to be somebody who's able to turn around, like I was thinking earlier, and see all of these cups, not just the ones that are down that make you want to walk away. Also, see the cups of possibility and transformation that are still standing. And it's about finding that balance within you before you make a response or a reaction to the rest of what's happening in your environment. So maybe with this situation, you are still working very much against trying to figure out how to handle a person who has these characteristics, but you've also got then this hidden struggle within yourself that might not have seemed like much of a struggle, but the universe just wants you to know. So let's also take a look at this Ten of Wands here, get a little bit of clarity on that. So this is the next thing that's coming for you, not the end all be all thing, but just something that's coming for you. And it's going to require, we know there's something that wants your, the world in reverse. Something isn't over. Okay, so that something wants your commitment over here, but this is to your lesson that you have to learn. Here is something that possibly the thing that didn't pass judgment here, but you've got something that isn't over. That's how that world feels. But it's not going to be as easy as you'd hope. There's a burden attached to it. Maybe, let's see what this card is. So it's the Four of Cups in reverse. It's that, okay. So both of you had, by this point, after looking at this situation for a while, both of you had kind of wanted to walk away a little bit from this situation, or at least disengage to the point where you don't have to feel it so much. But there's not been really an opportunity to do this. So both of you are having to come back and face this a little bit. And that is sort of what's happening here. And it's burdensome because it is relevant to this lesson that you've not had the opportunity to learn, or not. It's not the opportunity. It hasn't quite clicked into place yet where it's something that you can put into play. Like, it feels like if you were to have the conversation with a person, you would be talking, you would say all of the right things because you actually do know. But what's difficult to do is when confronted with a person with these characteristics that pulls on you in exactly the way that your person does, sometimes it's difficult to know exactly how to act. And so it feels like that is what you're taking on. And I also wanted to grab you an oracle card to just give you a little bit of advice, because as I'm looking at this situation, I'm like, this is a person very much ensconced in the activities around that learning. This is hardcore learning at its best. And so we have the Bone Collector that has come out in reverse. And so the Bone Collector, this is an oracle deck. So this is not tarot. This is one of my favorite old oracle decks, and it is called, what is it called? The Enchanted Map Oracle. Sorry, I could barely see it from where I was sitting. It's called the Enchanted Map Oracle, and this one is the Bone Collector. It's the very first card in the deck, and the Bone Collector, when it's in the upright, it's all about releasing and getting rid of those things, those attachments that you don't need, kind of like what we talked about here. When it's in the reverse, it's saying, hold on, you may not be doing that. You may not be releasing those things that are essentially hurting you and causing these patterns. So that's what you want to work on. It's kind of another indication, and I'm going to just put this right here. It's kind of another indication that you want to, and I think it belongs here because it really, I think, fits between these two things, because it's about establishing this balance between this willingness to give love, and this is a calm, beautiful love, and this is sort of a rushing in, sort of ready to do things sort of love. And so this is establishing that balance, which will help you a great deal, but also this ability to look at the big picture and release your attachment to potential outcomes. So you'll see that in connection with this bone collector card. So that's kind of cool. It reinforces our message, but it also says, hey, there's a pattern here. And you want to be sure that you address that pattern, that you understand it. And it seems like you do. It feels like you are able to, you have your eyes open, and especially here, you're able to say, hold on, I see that it has happened, and I want to make sure that I look more closely at it this time. So I think that's that's probably what we're going to do here. There are more questions that we could ask here and more information that we could get. I want to go ahead and go into the extended for that. One of the things that I want to understand here is sort of what is it that you need to do, and I call it my bridge question, but it feels like the most important question here. What is it that you need to do? You're already in this beautiful place, you're very considerate, you've got this lesson that's sort of being really difficult for you right now. What do you have to do in order to get past this, to overcome this? What is it that bridges that energy between where you are right now and a place where you would much rather be? Even if you're in a pretty great place and have done a lot of the work so far, there's something that's vexing you. And that's what we're looking to solve and really understand. So we'll ask that. One of the other things that I kind of wanted to understand is I see that you are diving headlong into this solution energy and this sort of, it's almost a problem solving energy, but it's also a taking it on sort of energy. And so let's take it past this point. We know this is maybe your next step, but what ends up happening with that? How does it end up working out, And then I also kind of wanted to take a look a little bit farther into the link between your person and you. So we've looked into the relationship a little bit more, but I think what we want to do is look into kind of the relationship between the two of you, because it is very, very involved with what you're learning. Like I asked what you were learning, and your person popped up as the answer. And it's really, how do I navigate this group of characteristics? And so we're going to look at that link between the two of you and get a little bit closer on that when we go into the extended. So hopefully I will see you there if you're wanting to check a little bit more of that out. Otherwise, I would just say thanks so much. If this resonated, please do like, share, and subscribe so we can stay together and I can keep bringing you readings like this one. I'm going to hop over to the extended, but thanks so much, and I will see you in another reading.